Okay, so a few months ago, I moved out of London for good. After studying and starting my career here, after a couple of years here, I was honestly at a point where I was starting to get tired of the city. The rain, the rent prices, crumbling economy, high taxes, and a culture where the only pastime seems to be getting drunk, which was less and less me. It was a big decision to make because as an EU citizen who moved to the country before Brexit, I had the right to stay in the country indefinitely, but only if I stayed. So leaving the country and moving out basically meant that if I wanted to come back in, I would now need a visa and it would be a lot more difficult. So the stakes were high. But I had made up my mind and I decided to leave London to pursue my entrepreneurial dreams of freedom in Dubai. But after a few months of living in Dubai, I'm now back in London. For a while only. No, I have not moved back here. I'm just here over the summer because basically my plan was always that because Dubai is so hot in the summer, I don't want to be there over the summer. And I still like the European summers, so I'm going to spend the summers in Europe. But the reason I'm making this video here is in case you have seen my other videos about leaving London, that was obviously right after I had left. So now that I've been away for a couple of months, I wanted to sort of reflect on my decision and determine, like, do I regret my decision? Because I think I'm now at more of a point to really give more of an objective answer to that question. But first, I need to give you some context. So London is obviously a major city with incredible job opportunities, culture, history, and a lot of things to do. I just love walking around the city of London, which is, by the way, not the same thing as London. The city of London is like the square mile inside of the center of London. Anyway, I love walking around this area, this like city bustle, and it just feels like a very unique vibe. So I still enjoy doing that. And of course, before my newfound career as an entrepreneur, my main concern was, well, where can I find a job? Where can I get paid well enough to build wealth and things like this? And this, as a European, like London just is the default option, especially if you're English speaking and you want to build like a global career. London has a lot of opportunities. So obviously, like at this time in 2018 when I moved, it had a lot of things going for it and there were a lot of reasons to come to London that still apply to many people, as we will discuss. So in 2018, after graduating high school and completing my mandatory military service in Finland, I came here with the goal of graduating from UCL, this prestigious university in London, with my prestigious economics degree and basically becoming a corporate employee, climbing the ladder in the city, and basically the traditional path that everyone goes for here in London. Because apparently that's the thing that you're supposed to do, right? Anyway, I did that. I moved here with this goal in mind. And to be fair, I loved London for the first couple of years. The first year, I was essentially a tourist. And I was hanging out with the other international students like me that were seeing all these amazing things in London for the first time. We were going to all these places. We were traveling. It was great. And especially for me, it was a different experience because this was the first time I was living in a big city. Because I come from this small dead town in the middle of the forest of Finland. So just the fact of living in a city was just like a complete different experience to me, and I loved it. But obviously a lot of this was just the fact that it was a city. And the more I explored different cities in the world, I started realizing that a lot of the things that excite me about London aren't actually specific to London. That's just the fact that it's a city. And then a lot of the negative sides of London, a lot of the things that actually are not that great here, started to become something that I realized. And once this sort of honeymoon period was over, I sort of started seeing the city for what it was, which was not all roses and rainbows. So there's two broad things that I realized. As I traveled around the world, I started forming certain very specific preferences for the kind of place where I could see myself living long term. And I started more and more thinking about this idea of if I could form a city from scratch with everything I wanted, like what would be the specific objective criteria and characteristics that that place would have. Specifically, I would want it to be warm. I would want it to be reasonably priced. I would want it to be low tax because I don't like paying half of my income in taxes. I'd still want it to be a big city with a bustling center with a lot happening and a bunch of these other criteria. And then when I started overlaying these criteria with different places around the world, I started realizing that London actually doesn't match a lot of them. It matches the fact that it's a big city. That's really it. But obviously at the time, a big factor and probably the biggest factor was still, okay, where can I have a great career? Where can I get jobs, etc., etc. And that was still the thing that pushed me towards London. So despite the fact that I'm disliking London more and more, I was sort of stuck here because as a young graduate, my career was still the focus. But this was the case until my second realization, which was that this path of being a corporate employee, essentially a corporate slave until I'm 65, was not quite the kind of life that I actually wanted. And this entire thing of like working in this fancy office in central London and just climbing the ladder, making extra a couple of £1,000 each year was sort of a scam compared to the options that existed out there. So I started realizing that the thing I wanted to optimize for was freedom and entrepreneurship. And the thing is, once I got to the point where I built a self-sustaining business around my main YouTube channel, which was completely location independent, now I was no longer shackled to this one location where I just had to live because this is where my job was. So once I left my job, I was now free to essentially just choose any place in the world as long as I could like get a visa there and everything. And that is where I really did this exercise of, okay, if I could choose any place in the world, where would I live? Now that I essentially could. And I determined that out of all of these criteria that for me personally were most important, London just wasn't even near the top. And that is why I ended up moving to Dubai, which is a whole another story, which I've talked about in all of these videos. So do I hate London? No, I wouldn't say I hate it. It's still a great city and I enjoy coming here. For example, now that it's the summer, it's warm here, it's green, it's lush. I really enjoy being here. I enjoy going to WeWorks, working around the central area of London, going to lunch there, seeing all my friends, etc. But would I come back to live here? No, not really. I will probably always come here over the summer for like a couple of weeks. But other than that, yeah, this is not really the place. And the point of this is not that, oh, London is like terrible. It's like out of all the places that exist, out of all the options, it's just really not the place where I want to be, is what I'm trying to say. So do I regret leaving? No, not at all, because I still have the option of being here for the periods of time that I want to, and essentially at each given point of the year I can just be in the optimal place for that time of year, which is like pretty much exactly what I always wanted. But like the point of this video is not to bash on London and to be like, oh, you should not live in London. The point of this video is to really like get you to stop and think and to consider like all the options that are out there, and to consider like, is the place where you're at right now the place where you want to live? Because I think the life is too short to live in a location where you don't want to be. Do this exercise of defining what would your ideal city be, and then look at the different criteria and see which real world city matches those criteria the best. Put it down in the comments. I'll be very curious to hear. So that is my conclusion. Again, you should live exactly where you want. If you're in London and you love it, great, amazing, stay there. But if not, it's worth trying to go for a path where you have options, where you have freedom. If you want to hear more about the specific reasons of why I started disliking London and why it really wasn't a great match for me anymore, you can watch this video right here, and I'll see you in the next one.